Two of the fastest growing cities across the country are located right here in Kansas City. And even more shocking is which ones they are. In this video, we're breaking down the top 5 fastest growing cities by population growth in the Kansas City suburbs. This is all based on recent US Census data that was released. They're all estimates. The real question is, which ones of these do you believe? And which ones seem a little bit far-fetched? You watch until the end of this video. We're also going to break down income in some of the fastest growing cities in the Kansas City area. So stick around till then to see what it looks like. We're gonna get started with number 1, the fastest growing city in the entire Kansas City area. According to KC 5, it is Gardner, Kansas. Here's where it's located on the map. It's just southwest of Olathe. It's near DeSoto. It's not too far away from Overland Park, and it runs right alongside Spring Hill. And really, this entire portion of Johnson County has been growing very, very quickly. It being on the Kansas side, you've got some pretty good schools, according to niche.com and greatschools.org, and just an explosion in construction, which is something we'll talk about here in just a second. But according to that article from KC 5, it says the US Census Bureau released new population estimates from cities with populations of at least 2,000 people, and it showed that Gardner is the fastest growing city in the metro. It said that Gardner grew just under 5% in the latest tally. And we're going to save number 2 for here in just a second, but let's break that down. The main road in Gardner, they've kind of renovated the entire thing. You've got new shops, restaurants, etc. popping up there. You've got a ton of new home communities being developed. Prairie Trace is one that we featured on this channel, and you can watch that video after this one by clicking the link down below in the description. If you're thinking about moving to Gardner, Kansas, I want to give you an idea of what it would cost to buy a new home as well as an old home. So as of 2024, so far in the year, it would cost you about $439,000 to buy a brand new home. If you were looking at a pre-existing home in the city of Gardner, it'd be about $335,000, and those are selling in about 7 days, which is a little bit longer than you'll see some of the other cities on this list. Now, moving on to the second fastest growing city in Kansas City, you probably saw it on that article. It is the city of Raymore in Missouri, and here's what that looks like on the map. You're in South Kansas City. You're very close to Belton, which is also growing very, very quickly. You're close to Lee Summit. You've got all those lakes and probably a 20-minute drive at most away. And you're near Loch Lloyd, which is where everybody knows that Patrick Mahomes lives there. So that entire section of Kansas City has just been absolutely exploding. A lot of people are moving there. Of course, one recent controversy has been the South Kansas City landfill. The city of Raymore and quite a few other cities around there have had quite a pushback against that, and it's completely understandable. We made a video on this channel last year about that landfill, and it looks like it's almost been put to bed. Now, according to that article from KC 5, it says that Raymore, Missouri is the second fastest growing city in the metro. It added about 4.7% during the year that ended in 2023. It also goes on to say that both cities, so Raymore and Gardner, Kansas, are in the top 70 when it comes to the fastest growing communities in the country based on percentage. This is quite an interesting one to see. I know that Gardner, Kansas is probably not anybody's, top guess for a quickly growing city, and I don't think Raymore is one of the top guesses on the Missouri side either. But we'll take a look at a couple others on the Missouri and Kansas sides respectively right after we discuss the median home value and how much you can expect a home to cost in the city of Raymore. So if you're looking at a brand new home, there are quite a few different options. One main one is around the Creekmore Golf Course. A typical new home in the city of Raymore is about $526,000. That's year to date, and it's based on median sale prices. So it's excluding any outlier, very expensive or very cost-effective properties. You've also got pre-existing homes, which are selling anywhere around $333,000. Those are taking a little bit longer to sell, about 13 days. Despite the quick population growth, I suspect that one reason for that is you did have that kind of lingering threat of the landfill. I know that nobody wants to move to a city, buy a home when there's this kind of big storm cloud over it with the prospect of having a landfill just miles away. But again, it does look like that's been put to bed, and that could maybe even catapult Raymore and the growth of the city even further. Now, moving on to number 3 on the list is Blue Springs. And here's what that looks like on the map. You're just a little north of Lee Summit, but that whole area of the Kansas City metro is growing very quickly. You might be surprised to see how low the prices for for homes are, both new construction and pre-existing homes. And we'll get to those here in just a second. But the way that I found this data, it wasn't on that KCTV5 article. I actually had to go to the census.gov website and go through all of this data. So here's a chart of all the different cities on the Missouri side. You can see all the increases, decreases, and it's not just Kansas City, it's all of Missouri. So some of those are like way outside of the metro area. But Blue Springs, it charted a 1.6% population increase, which isn't as much as Raymore or Gardner, which were 4%, 5% respectively, but 1.6% is a pretty good sign of growth in the area. I would almost expect to see that Lee Summit growing faster than Blue Springs, but seeing Blue Springs a little bit ahead of Lee Summit is pretty nice to see. I think the area has a ton of potential. There's a lot of development going on, and the price of one of those brand new homes being built as we speak, year to date, is a median price of $385,000, which is one of the most cost-effective prices that you could purchase a new construction home in the entire Kansas City metro, bar none. I don't think there's a single city that can come close to that level of affordability for a brand new home. If you're looking at a pre-existing home, you won't find that much in cost savings. In fact, those are somewhere around $297,000. Those typically last about 6 days on market, which yes, is very fast for selling, but compared to some of the highest rated suburbs in Kansas City, it is taking a little bit longer, with most of those suburbs taking like 2-3 days, selling in a matter of just one weekend. It's nice to see an area which is growing in population growth where you do have a little bit more time to take a look at some of the homes in the market before deciding to go ahead and purchase one. Now, the last thing that you should know about Blue Springs is that compared to Lee Summit, who's seen like a tremendous amount of growth over the last 5 years or so, Lee Summit charted a 0.7% increase in population. Again, Blue Springs was almost a whole percentage point bigger at 1.6%. Before we move on to the fourth fastest growing city in the Kansas City metro area, this is your first time seeing these videos, then welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Massa. I'm a licensed real estate agent here in Kansas and Missouri. We make videos just like this about the Kansas City suburbs, new construction homes in Kansas City, and the Kansas City real estate market. So if you'd like to see videos just like this in the future, I invite you to hit that subscribe button down below. And of course, if you're buying or building a home and you'd like to see how all of this stuff matters for you and how you can use this information to get a much better deal, then make sure to reach out. All my contact info is down below. Give me a phone call, text message, email. Be absolutely happy to support you. So moving on to the fourth one, it's the city that we've made a whole lot of videos about, a lot of new construction homes, a lot of development. It's also near the fastest growing city, which was Gardner, Kansas. Number 4 is the city of Olathe. If you're not familiar with it, here's what it looks like on the map. It is just north of the city of Gardner, which was number 1 on the list, and it's very close to Overland Park, which is consistently finding itself in the rankings for one of the best suburbs in the entire country, not just the Kansas City metro area. But there's something interesting happening here, and I want to shine the floodlights on it here in just a second. But before we get to that, I want to kind of compare the population growth of Gardner versus Olathe. So according to census.gov, the population growth of Olathe in the last year or so was about 1.3%. Now, something important to note is that the population size of Olathe is almost around like 150,000 people. Compared to the population of Gardner, it would take a whole lot more people moving there to see a 1% change in the population, right? Gardner being a smaller city, it's easier to see bigger swings closer to that 5% number. So this is still a pretty substantial increase in the city's growth. Now, second observation that's important is Overland Park. It gets all the praise. You've probably seen it at the top of all of those lists. Well, Overland Park, according to these estimates, actually backslid a 0.3% decrease in population. Now, Olathe being one of the biggest cities in Johnson County, Overland Park being the biggest, its population size is like 200,000 people compared to the just under 150,000 people you'd see in Olathe. So will we see Olathe eclipse Overland Park in the near future? Probably not, but it's not something that we can necessarily rule out just yet. There's still a lot of new development, and the price of one of those brand new homes is somewhere around $650,000 year to date. If you did go after a pre-existing home, there are quite a few different ones to choose from given the size of the city of Olathe. Those are a median price of around $390,000. They take about just 3 days to actually sell. Now, moving on to the fifth city on this list, it is the city of Leawood, and here's what that looks like on the map. map. It's just on the other side of Overland Park, right up against State Line, kind of close to the Raymore Belton area that we discussed earlier in this video. And it's consistently one of the most popular suburbs in the Kansas City area. It's also one of the more expensive suburbs in Kansas City. But before we get to that, census.gov, it ranks the growth as somewhere around 0.8%. Granted, the population currently sits somewhere around 33,000 people. So that's certainly one of the larger increases in population that we saw on that list of all the cities in Kansas and on the Missouri side. And if you were going after a brand new construction home in the city of Leawood, that price is going to be up there. It's going to be about $1.45 million. And if you're going after an older home, you can generally find those around $750,000. They're taking about just 4 days to sell, which, considering that price point, all right, it's a higher price point. There are less people looking for homes at that price. That's really, really quick. 4 days for those homes to go under contract just goes to show you how popular the area is. There's South Leawood that's growing very quickly. Aventino is a brand new home community out there. And I'll leave the link to that video that we did right down in the description below so you can watch it after the next part of this one. Before we get to the last part of the video, which is about the household incomes in some of those fast growing cities on the Kansas side, that KCTV5 article did highlight a few cities that actually backslid and saw population decreases, few of which I found kind of shocking. So it goes on to say that Lenexa, Independence, Kansas City, Kansas, Prairie Village, Overland Park, and Raytown all lost residents according to that census data. Now, a couple of those that stick out to me. Lenexa, that's quite shocking. I don't know how accurate that is. Everybody seems to like the city of Lenexa. They put in the city center. The city itself, it has a great feel. Yes, there are a lot of roundabouts, but there's a lot of green space. The city spent a lot of money on infrastructure, and it really, really shows. I haven't heard a single person complain about it. It's interesting to see that it actually decreased in population growth. Independence isn't too shocking, although that area does seem to be growing a little bit. Kansas City, Kansas, I can understand that one, but I do think the Piper area, around the Legends area, you've got a lot of big developments headed there over the next couple years, and we'll feature that on a future video, so make sure to hit that subscribe button so you see it when it comes out. The other notable ones, Prairie Village, Overland Park, both very highly rated on the Kansas side. It's interesting to see that they're decreasing in population. I'd really like to see the specific zip codes and the parts of those cities where people are moving out of, but perhaps it's all over. And Raytown, I don't think is that shocking. I know if you've been following the news with the Chiefs Stadium, there was some talk of an entertainment district around the current stadium, and they decided not to do that because there hasn't been any growth in the city of Raytown for decades and decades and decades at that point. So moving on to the final part of the video, the median household incomes in some of the fastest growing cities on the Kansas side. Now, in the process of gathering all of the data for this video, I came across this article from Forbes. It says the 50 richest cities in Kansas per the latest census data. So not just population growth, but also incomes. I don't have a ton of stuff to point out here, but you might find it interesting. You got Mission Hills at the top of the list, median household income of $250,000 plus. Mission Woods, which is a smaller little area. There aren't too many homes located there. It is in the Johnson County side. It's I believe it's just north of Mission Hills. It's near Fairway and also the Westwood area. And you've got a median household income of around, $198,000. And you can kind of go down the list. You've got Fairway, Leawood right here. You'll notice it says the median home value for Leawood is $592. That is horribly off. Now keep in mind this data is all from like 2022 through 2023, so that could be one of the reasons for the discrepancy, but I'm willing to bet that there's some level of error on both sides of the equation. But overall, going down this list, something that I saw interesting the last couple of weeks is there have been quite a few articles published online that show how quickly the average cost to buy a home across the country is. And it went from like the 300s just a couple of years ago to now like $450,000. And to buy a home at that price point with today's mortgage rates, you almost have to be making six figures or more in order to make it affordable, meaning that monthly payment is 30% of your take-home income or less, which is just absolutely crazy to see. So even though you see some of the higher incomes, like $250,000 plus every single year on this list, it certainly does not go as far as it would have just years ago, especially in this housing market where it's very competitive, prices are increasing very quickly, and it's really, really, really hard to find a great deal out there. And while there are still good deals, and that's not to say it's impossible, you just have to know exactly where to look. So So if you're building a home in Kansas City, make sure to reach out. My contact information is all down below. If you'd like to have a conversation about this to make sure you're getting a really good deal when you purchase a home or build a home here, I'm absolutely here to support you. Go ahead and give me a phone call, text message, email. I'd love to have that conversation with you and make sure that you're set up for success. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below to see future videos like this. And of course, next up, you can watch this video that YouTube thinks you would enjoy the most, or you can click on this playlist of all the different videos we've made about the Kansas City suburbs. So click either here or here, and I'll see you on the other side.